The gruesome, untold saga of Henry VIII's descent into horror. Imagine stepping back into the opulent yet oppressive halls of Tudor England, where one man's insatiable hunger for power, pleasure, and progeny reshaped a nation and destroyed himself. In the process, Henry VIII, the name conjures images of a robust, red-bearded monarch, the serial husband who defied the Pope, founded the Church of England, and executed queens with chilling efficiency. But peel away the layers of romanticized history, the portraits of a virile young king jousting in gleaming armor, the tales of courtly intrigue and religious revolution, and what emerges is a figure far more grotesque, far more tragic, and infinitely more horrifying than any schoolbook dares to depict. This was a ruler whose body became a battlefield of decay, whose obesity required mechanical ingenuity just to propel him forward, and whose corpse, in a final act of defiance, literally exploded within its coffin, spewing the remnants of royal rot for all to witness. We're delving into a level of physical and psychological horror that makes the bloodiest episodes of Game of Thrones feel like quaint fairy tales. In this extended exploration, we'll unearth the full, unvarnished truth of Henry VIII, drawing on contemporary accounts, medical hindsight, and the shadowy corners of Tudor chronicles that often get glossed over. We'll dissect his physical disintegration, the calculated cruelties inflicted on his 6 wives that extended far beyond the executioner's blade, the gluttonous rituals that fueled his downfall into a labyrinth of spies and suspicion, and the chaotic, almost supernatural aftermath of his death, the post-mortem spectacle that seemed to mock the very notion of royal dignity. By the time we're through, you'll view Henry not as the charismatic reformer of legend, but as a cautionary embodiment of how absolute power can corrupt absolutely, rotting the soul as surely as it did his flesh. If you're fascinated by the dark underbelly of history, where human frailty meets unchecked ambition, stick around and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the past's most unsettling secrets. Let's begin our journey into the heart of this Tudor nightmare. His body, a walking catastrophe of decay, disease, and despair. To truly comprehend the monstrosity that Henry VIII became, we must confront the stark reality of his physical form. In his later years, a body that had devolved from a symbol of virile kingship into a grotesque. In his youth, Henry was the epitome of Renaissance manhood, tall at over 6 feet, athletic with a 32-inch waist, and a reputation as a skilled jouster, hunter, and dancer. Chroniclers like the Venetian ambassador Sebastian Justinian praised him in 1515 as the handsomest potentate I ever set eyes on, a king who embodied the ideal of chivalric strength. But by the 1540s, that image had shattered irrevocably. His waist had expanded to a staggering 54 inches, equivalent to the circumference of a large barrel or the height of a small child. His weight is estimated by historians to have reached around 400 pounds, more than triple the average Tudor man's 140-pound frame. This wasn't the soft, manageable girth of overindulgence. It was a bloated, painful mass that rendered him nearly immobile, a living monument to excess in an era when food scarcity plagued the common folk. The root of this transformation lay in a series of misfortunes, chief among them a catastrophic jousting accident on January 24, 1536, at Greenwich Palace. Clad in full armor, the 44-year-old king charged into the lists, only to be unseated when his horse stumbled, crashing down upon him and pinning his legs. He remained unconscious for 2 full hours, a state that, in the pre-modern medical world, often signaled impending death. Eyewitnesses described the court in panic, with rumors swirling that the king was already gone. While he survived, the injury was profound. It reopened old varicose ulcers from a 1527 jousting wound, damaged his legs, circulation, and, crucially, likely caused traumatic brain injury. Modern neurologists, analyzing accounts of his post-accident behavior, suggest frontal lobe damage, explaining the abrupt shift from a relatively even-tempered ruler to a volatile despot prone to explosive rages, memory lapses, and impulsive decisions. This TBI may have disrupted his pituitary gland, leading to hormonal imbalances like Cushing's syndrome, which manifests in rapid weight gain, muscle weakness, high blood pressure, and non-healing wounds. Those wounds were the stuff of nightmares. Chronic ulcers on both legs, exacerbated by poor circulation, Diabetes, another suspected condition from his sugar-rich diet, and possible osteomyelitis bone infection festered endlessly. They weren't discrete sores, these were open craters that oozed thick pus and sloughed off necrotic flesh. Courtiers like Sir Anthony Denny held pomanders' scented orbs or vinegar-soaked cloths to their noses during audiences. While ambassadors reported the odor as insupportable, servants tasked with dressing the king applying bandages soaked in wine or rose oil, or cauterizing the ulcers with hot irons drew straws to avoid the duty, viewing it as a form of punishment. Infections flared repeatedly, causing fevers that left Henry bedridden for weeks, his legs swollen like tree trunks, and wrapped in linen to contain the discharge. What history classes often omit is the profound psychological impact on Henry himself. The king, who styled himself as God's anointed, couldn't acknowledge frailty. To do so was to invite challenges to his divine right. His physicians, including Dr. William Butts and Dr. George Owen, walked a tightrope, proposing aggressive treatments. Like amputation risked accusations of treason, as it implied the king's body was imperfect. Instead, they prescribed futile remedies, herbal plasters, bloodletting, or even mercury-based ointments, which may have worsened his mood swings if syphilis was involved, though evidence is debated. By 1545, Henry's mobility was a farce. Custom trams wheeled chairs with pulleys ferried him between rooms, operated by straining yeomen, while a mechanical hoist lifted him onto horses for rare public appearances. Chronic pain fueled insomnia and irritability, and severe constipation exacerbated by a meat-heavy diet, low in fiber, led to humiliating bowel issues, requiring enemas and discreet cleanups by loyal attendants. Compounding this, Henry's likely diabetes brought impotence, headaches, and blurred vision, while hypertension risked strokes. Some scholars posit Kell-positive blood type as a factor in his wife's miscarriages, but for Henry, it meant a body in revolt against its master. This physical prison bred mental torment. The once vital king, now a great lump of flesh, as one critic whispered, projected his insecurities outward, executing those who dared comment on his health. In essence, Henry's body wasn't just failing, it was a microcosm of his reign, bloated with excess, riddled with corruption, and destined for explosive collapse. The wives, layers of psychological torment, calculated cruelty, and enduring trauma. Henry VIII's marital carousel: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived is etched into cultural memory, but the true depth of suffering endured by his 6 wives reveals a pattern of emotional manipulation, isolation, and terror that transcends simple political expediency. These women, often pawns in dynastic chess games, faced a husband whose love curdled into hatred with terrifying speed. Their lives a blend of lavish courtship and psychological warfare. Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first queen and wife for 24 years, exemplifies the slow burn of abandonment. A Spanish princess wed at 15 in 1501. She bore 6 children, only Mary surviving infancy a string of stillbirths and miscarriages that Henry blamed on divine curse, citing Leviticus' prohibition against marrying a brother's widow. Catherine had briefly wed Henry's brother Arthur. By 1527, obsessed with a male heir and enamored of Anne Boleyn, Henry sought annulment, dubbing it the king's great matter. The abuse was subtle at first, isolation in remote manners, like the Moor, where her household shrank from hundreds to a skeletal staff. Rumors of her insanity circulated to discredit her, and a ban on seeing Mary, then a teen, severing their bond. Catherine resisted, appealing to Pope Clement VII and smuggling letters via loyal ambassadors. But Henry stripped her titles, reducing her to Dowager Princess of Wales. She died in 1536 at Kimbleton Castle, emaciated and heartbroken, her last letter to Henry, professing eternal love, met with indifference as he partied in yellow. Some historians suspect arsenic poisoning, given her symptoms of heart failure and black vomit, possibly administered by spies. Anne Boleyn's story is a whirlwind of passion turned persecution. Courted for 7 years, she wed Henry in 1533 after his break with Rome, but her failure to produce a son, Elizabeth, born in 1533, followed by miscarriages, sealed her fate. Henry's 1536 accusations, adultery with 5 men, including incest with brother George, were fabricated. Extracted via torture, musician Mark Smeaton cracked under the rack. The cruelty peaked when Henry compelled Anne to view the executions. From her tower window, heads rolling, bodies quartered, her brothers among them, a deliberate psychological blow before her own beheading on May 19, 1536. With a French swordsman for mercy, her final words professed loyalty, but Henry's glee was evident. He betrothed Jane Seymour the next day. Jane Seymour, the obedient third wife, escaped execution, but not suffering. Wed in 1536, she endured a difficult pregnancy, delivering Edward in 1537 after a 3-day labor that left her weakened. Puerperal fever claimed her 12 days later, her body ravaged by infection. Henry mourned. Genuinely, her tomb bears his effigy, but his grief lasted weeks. Scouts for wife number 4 began almost immediately. Anne of Cleves' 1540 marriage was a diplomatic disaster. Henry, misled by Hans Holbein's flattering portrait, found her ugly and unconsummated the union, annulling it after 6 months. The humiliation was public nicknames like Flanders Mare stung, but Anne's savvy acquiescence saved her. She accepted the annulment, gained estates, and lived comfortably as the king's beloved sister, outlasting Henry, Catherine Howard. A naive 17-year-old, when wed in 1540, faced the most visceral downfall. Her premarital flings exposed, Henry reacted with rage, interrogations under duress. Public executions of her lovers, Francis Derham's head spiked on London Bridge, and a new law retroactively criminalizing her past. Beheaded at 19 in 1542, her ghost allegedly haunts Hampton Court, a testament to her terror. Catherine Parr, the 6th and final wife from 1543, navigated intellectual minefields. A reformer, she debated theology with Henry, but nearly faced heresy charges in 1546, saved by quick submission. She nursed his wounds, enduring the stench and rages, and outlived him. Marrying Thomas Seymour afterward, Henry's abuse pattern, devaluation, discard, was amplified by his power. Gifts and affection flipped to threats, pregnancies monitored like state secrets, loyalties tested with spies. He disinherited Mary repeatedly, forcing her to sign documents affirming her bastardy, and kept Elizabeth at arm's length. This wasn't mere politics. It was narcissistic control, leaving his wives and daughters scarred, their traumas echoing in Mary's bloody reign and Elizabeth's aversion to marriage. His insane eating habits, gluttony as a royal spectacle, and self-destruction in Henry's voracious appetite wasn't incidental. It was a cornerstone of his identity, a ritualistic excess that mirrored his broader indulgences and hastened his doom. In an age of intermittent famines, Henry's daily calorie intake soared to 5,000, equivalent to feeding 10 average Tudors few, by a belief in food's alchemical powers and a courtly culture of ostentatious feasting. Breakfasts at Whitehall or Hampton Court, served around 10 a.m. to 30 select courtiers, featured roasted meats, whole boars, lambs, or oxen turned on spits, seasoned with saffron and ginger. Exotic birds, herons, egrets, peacocks were roasted, gilded, and refeathered for drama. Their symbolism key: swan for grace, venison for hunting strength, oysters dozens daily for virility amid impotence, whispers, dinners and suppers dragged on 4 hours, with 800 dishes prepared by 200 staff, pies crammed with larks or lampreys, custards sweetened with imported sugar, and subtleties, edible sculptures of marzipan castles. Vegetables, scorned as plebeian. Henry banned base foods like turnips, opting for meat-heavy meals that worsened gout and constipation. Rituals amplified the absurdity. Meals were public theaters, with Henry at a raised dais sampling from gold plates while musicians played. Paranoia dictated protocols, tasters up to a dozen sampled bites, waiting 30 minutes for poisons in locked kitchens guarded by yeomen. Even wine was poured from sealed casks, tested for toxins. Superstitions drove choices: deer hearts for courage, porpoise for intellect, pseudo-medical fads from alchemists like Cornelius Agrippa. As health faltered, eating became defiance. Despite ulcers and immobility, portions grew, ignoring physicians' veiled warnings, risking treason. This gluttony, Lafeber, Hyperion likely induced diabetes, hypertension, and scurvy-like symptoms. eroding his body while symbolizing his reign's rot, a king devouring his kingdom's resources, blind to the cost. The paranoia that ruled an empire. A realm ensnared in suspicion and surveillance. Henry's paranoia wasn't innate. It blossomed post-1536 injury, evolving from prudent caution into a suffocating web that ensnared his court and kingdom, likely stemming from TBI-induced damage to his amygdala and prefrontal cortex regions, governing fear and judgment. This fear reshaped Tudor England into a precursor to modern surveillance states. Bedchamber. Security was fortress-like, loaded crossbows and swords within reach, daggers under pillows, and a rotation of armed yeomen standing watch as he slept, their eyes on him through the night. Traveling incognito was impossible. He demanded personal locks on all doors and secret passages in palaces like Whitehall for quick escapes. Peepholes in walls allowed him to observe meetings undetected, while hidden squints, listening holes, captured whispers. His intelligence apparatus was vast. Thomas Cromwell's network of spies, informants in every noble house reported daily, with double agents watching the watchers to prevent betrayal. Food paranoia bordered on absurdity. Sealed kitchens, guarded ingredients, multi-tiered tasters, one for poison, another for taste, and 30-minute delays before Henry ate. Even gifts were dissected for hidden threats. Children bore the brunt. Mary, deemed illegitimate, was spied upon as a potential Catholic threat, forced to renounce her faith under duress. Elizabeth, too, lived under scrutiny, her household infiltrated. Executions for preemptive treason based on dreams or rumors filled the Tower. Over 57,000 died during his reign, many for imagined plots. This contagion spread, courtiers informed, on rivals for favor, fostering a culture of dread where smiles hid knives. Henry's paranoia eroded alliances, executing cousins like the Duke of Buckingham on flimsy charges, and isolated him, his rages alienating even loyalists like Thomas More, beheaded in 1535 for refusing the oath of supremacy. By 1547, the king was a solitary figure, his fear a self-fulfilling prophecy that weakened the throne he sought to secure. Death couldn't even stop the chaos. A post-mortem horror show Henry's demise on January 28, 1547. At age 55 was no peaceful. Passing it was a fittingly chaotic culmination of his tormented life. Bedridden in Whitehall's privy chamber, his frame too massive for standard beds, he whispered confessions to Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, acknowledging sins but clinging to Catholic last rites. The official cause, a distemper of the body, but contemporaries noted septicemia from ulcers, compounded by dropsy edema that swelled his limbs like balloons. Embalming was rushed, viscera removed, body stuffed with spices and wrapped in cerecloth, then lead sheathed and coffined in oak. The cortege to Windsor, a 16-day procession with 1,000 mourners, halted at Sion Abbey where disaster struck. Internal gases from rapid decomposition, accelerated by diabetes and obesity, built intolerable pressure, bursting the lead lining. Foul liquids and tissue leaked, the stench halting the march as servants scrubbed with vinegar and herbs. Dogs, drawn by the odor, lapped at the puddles, a scene evoking Friar William Petto's 1532 prophecy that dogs will lick thy blood as they licked Ahab's. Burial at St. George's Chapel beside Jane Seymour required a vault widened thrice the ground, collapsing under the coffin's weight over a ton with leaded. For decades, reports of groans and smells from the tomb-fueled ghost stories, likely methane escapes. Several embalmers died weeks later, probably from septic shock or typhus contracted from his remains. Henry's death rippled outward. Edward ascended at 9, but regents like Edward Seymour plundered the treasury, echoing Henry's excesses. His will, altered under duress, sowed discord among heirs. The monstrous legacy of a fallen titan, lessons from a rotten reign. Henry VIII's story transcends biography. It's a profound allegory for power's perils, where ambition's fruits turn poisonous. From golden youth to decaying despot, his life illustrates how injury, indulgence, and isolation can warp a man into a monster, his court a mirror of his inner turmoil. He reformed England, dissolving monasteries, amassing wealth, but at what cost? Thousands executed, families shattered, a nation divided by faith. Yet his legacy endures. The Church of England stands. His daughters Mary and Elizabeth reigned, the latter's golden age owing much to his genes and her survival instincts, and his image romanticized in portraits by Holbein belies the rot beneath. If this extended saga has reshaped your understanding of history's hidden horrors, subscribe for more immersive explorations. The past is a treasury of untold tales, each more gripping than the last. What aspect of Henry's nightmare shocked you most? Share in the comments, and let's uncover more together.